Hi everyone, it's Mark here, and it's so nice to have you with us. And we've got today with us Aldine Dallas, a really good friend of ours now, and she's going to be sharing with us a little bit about her journey and what's been happening with her the last couple of months. Um, I'm just excited to have you here, Aldine.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Aldine's going to tell us a little bit about where her journey starts, and so I'm just going to hand it right over to you.
Well, in quick summary, just short of 9 years ago, I found myself in a rehabilitation centre, which was quite a shock, more for my family than me, to be honest, because I'd had quite a bit of stuff going on behind the scenes that I hadn't really shared about. But once I was in this facility, it was identified that a lot of my behaviour, which came from a sense of brokenness, was of addictive or alcoholic behavior, and I was put into a program which was very, very good. It set some kind of spiritual foundation for me, and I worked that program for about 6.5 years, and then I found myself in a church where I'd gone for counseling, not for seeking Jesus. I was actually a little bit angry at that stage towards Jesus because in my recovery as such, I'd experienced quite a lot of adversity. The most recent thing at that time had been quite a traumatic hijacking where I'd been assaulted physically and sexually, and I had a lot of injuries, and I'd had almost a emotional breakdown, and someone suggested I go for counselling, and in that counselling, within that Christian environment, within the space of a week, I had found myself asking the pastor how this getting saved thing works. And he said, in that moment, all we have to do is pray, and I got saved. And that's just under 2.5 years ago. So from that time until now, I've been walking an amazing journey, trying to learn about Jesus and follow in a personal relationship with him, which is where I'm at today.
It's so often, when we're going through our lives, we don't really take note of the steps we're taking in the journey we are on. And it's awesome to see how we come to Jesus. But sometimes, even after we've come to Jesus, there's still some challenges, isn't there?
Yes,
And
there have been.
so, and I'd just like you to share with us kind of some of the small challenges that you've faced, some kind of after that, and where you found yourself a couple of months ago.
Well, I took to this Christ journey very quickly. I didn't have a old covenant or legalized background to fight with or wrestle with. So when I was told the basic principles of me being a saint and a daughter of a king, which made me part of a royal family, my childlike nature loved that whole concept. And I threw myself into doing Alpha, Freedom in Christ, doing as much as I could to suction out the information that I believed would transform my life. What I didn't understand was that because I'd spent a life of exploring and searching, I had engaged in quite a lot of, I suppose it was spiritual things which are not of Christ. And in doing that, I'd find myself in a relationship with the dark side. And I didn't know that I had, by giving my life to Jesus, kind of turned my back on what we call the enemy, who wasn't terribly happy about my new decision. And I now became quite aware that I was fighting this battle within my mind. And what has been the biggest thing for me has been to renew my mind continually, because I have been lied to and deceived my entire life, and this has been one area where I've realized I have to take responsibility. I obviously have Jesus and I have God and I have the Holy Spirit, but I have to take my faith and put in some works to get to the point of experiencing this inheritance that I was told about. So yeah, it's been there have been times when I've said, oh, this is quite hard, but I've also realized that I have made it quite difficult because I have not focused on the truth, standing on the truth. What has been made clear to me recently is I've got to know what that truth is and be convicted in it to be able to stand on it. So, I mean, 2.5 years is quite a short period of time, and I think I wanted to be accelerated to this phase, maybe with someone like yourself, is overnight. And, you know, renewing of the mind takes time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, people don't realize that it's not just a mental assent to information,
Yes.
but it's a conscious decision-making process that leads to different actions that we take because of the truth that we now understand. And that's really what the renewing of the mind
Yes, and
translates into.
I was hit with a lot of physical ailments, which I found myself complaining about, going, but if you were in this amount of pain, you'd also struggle to stay in a place of positivity. And what I've learned most recently is that physical pain in itself has been a lie, because I heard 2.5 years ago that by his stripes, referring to Jesus, I was already healed over 2,000 years ago, and I thought that sounds great. But right now, as I was sitting in the first year or so of my Christian walk, I was still struggling with pain, with debt, with broken relationships, with a career that was in bits and pieces, and I almost expected a wand to be waved, and everything would just literally happen overnight. All areas of my life were coming into amazing abundance, except for my physical body, and it was as if I was hit from head to toe with things like migraines. I had an abscess in my mouth that hadn't healed at all for a period of 3 years, but it became more persistent this year. I had skin irritations on the inside of my arms and behind my knees. I had terrible, what felt like indigestion and chest pain, diaphragm pain initially, but got me to believe I had an ulcer. And then I had very bad chest pain that I'd been treated for about 4 years with a chiropractor, maybe every 3 months, then every 6 weeks, and then this year it was almost every week. I was told that I had Tietze syndrome, which is little hot spots of the intercostal muscles being inflamed, and it felt like barbed wire was squeezing me. I had low back pain. I was diagnosed with a hip condition, and it was just, I got to a point where I was like, this is not fair. I'm so busy following what I'm being taught in the Word, and by His stripes I was healed, but what I'm experiencing right now does not feel like healing. And
Absolutely.
so I got to a point where I was quite demotivated, almost slipping into fear, doubt, and ready to throw the towel in, to be honest. I was angry. This is not fair.
So is this around about the time when you were going to the Todd White conference?
Yes.
You want to tell us a little bit more about kind of the state of mind that you were in at that point, and
Yes.
then kind of what happened that day?
So at that stage, I had given up my flat. I'd given in notice because I'd been able to work less and less from about June, and my rental was my biggest expense. And friends had said, well, you could come and stay with us over a period of time. My body was suffering from adrenal overload and chronic fatigue, and I was self-employed. I'd been running my own business for about a year, and I was suffering with insomnia, so I wasn't able to sleep, but I was overexhausted. So it was just such a vicious cycle. And because I wasn't working in a full-time job, I was self-employed. I remember seeing on the highway there was that sign outside the Durban Christian Centre saying Todd White. And I'd seen it for weeks and weeks and weeks. And then a friend mentioned maybe we should go one evening. And then the more I drove past it, the more I realized it was a 3 or 4 day workshop. I had very little money in my bank account, but I saw if I signed up for the workshop, it was a few £100. And as crazy as it sounded in my head that I should be wasteful with money I needed for petrol and food, I kind of had a conviction, just go on this course. So I signed up online, and I actually got there a day earlier, arrived the day before the conference started, ready to rock and roll, only to find out that the first session was actually that evening only, and then the day session started the next day. So I went there with a bit of disillusionment, but also an expectation that something had to shift.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know how, but I'd seen many of Todd White's DVDs. Plus, he came from a background of addiction, so I had a bit of I related to his story in many ways, and I was saying to myself, if he is where he's at now, maybe there's hope for me, and that was about
It's a good thing.
it.
Awesome. Very cool. So you were basically at that point in time quite desperate.
Very much so.
And were you kind of what was the condition of your body and your mental state at that point? What were you on, and what were you doing at that point in time?
Well, I tried, because of my background of addiction, I'd always been taught not to lean heavily on medication. And that was one area where I'd stayed quite vigilant. To go to bed at night, I would have an ice pack on my chest, an ice pack on my diaphragm, an ice pack on my bladder, because my bladder also needed to, I was going to the toilet maybe every hour during the night. So I found that the ice soothed me, and then I'd have a heat pack on my lower back. So that was my nighttime routine. It was almost like relays going back to the freezer, because my body heat would obviously melt the ice packs. Mentally, I had been processing quite a bit of family relationship catastrophes that had been presented with, and I was suffering from huge amounts of rejection, and not being able to work and perform. I was feeling almost worthless, not confident in any ability that I had, and this hovering of debt over me, which I wasn't in debt, but I didn't have any credit, and I had no foreseeable income. So it felt like an oppression of debt. Within days I would have no money. So there was always this get out of jail card, and I'd had it for at least 6 months. Well, if this doesn't work out, I'll just kill myself. And I'd been having these thoughts in my mind. Initially it was every couple of days, and at the state I was in as this Todd White conference came, it was all day. Well, let's check out this. If it doesn't work, I'll just kill myself. So there was, I suppose you could call it depression. I hadn't really at that stage been to any doctors, because I knew what I had and I wasn't going to go on medication. So I just kind of got used to living with the pain, but it had got to a point where I was about to give in, and I had explored different ways, or I'd almost had the thought process of different ways of how to kill myself. I was just a bit nervous of which one was going to guarantee the end, versus imagine jumping off a building and just breaking a leg, and I've got all that to deal with, So it was quite a dark place. It wasn't, and it wasn't a place I was proud of. I felt huge amounts of shame. How could I have been in recovery for 8 years, and I felt like I was worse off than before I went into the rehabilitation center? So I was struggling with guilt and shame for being pathetic, was a label I used a lot when I spoke about my life.
So it almost feels like there was pressure on all sides, and the enemy was really trying to just make you feel like you were worthless and useless. Yeah. And so what happened when you were there?
Well, the first day was amazing. We got to listen to Todd in the morning. In the afternoons, we went to go and practice what we'd been taught with regards to practicing prophecy, practicing words of knowledge, and praying for people. So I'd gone with the team down to the beachfront outside Addington, mostly, because there we were going to find a lot of sick people. And we prayed, and we saw wonderful healings, women with sore backs, sore legs, a lot of municipal workers that did physical labor. Even the prayer team that I was with, we prayed for a lot of them. Everyone had a chance, and I was so in awe of what God does through believers. But I also had this big question mark in my mind, because it was that what about me syndrome, which I'd experienced my whole life. Everybody else gets prayer, everyone else gets healing, but my prayer team had almost forgotten that I had also said, please can I have prayer, because of where I was at. So in the afternoon session, when we sat listening to testimonies, and then we had some more lectures by another pastor, I sat there very unpresent, because my head was just going with, well, jeepers, even here, you're still the outcast, you're still rejected. And I was just waiting for the meeting to wrap up so I could go home and sleep, to have enough energy to come back for the evening service because I'd had insomnia the whole night before. So yeah, it was a great first day, but also headed in the direction of disillusionment once again.
Okay, so then what happened?
So as the hall was emptying, a young guy came up to me and he was wearing a red t-shirt and he just started speaking into all my ailments. It was as if he had a clipboard and he was like, headache, sore chest, sore stomach, sore back. And I realized that he was in the prophetic and he was giving words of wisdom. And then he just said, please can I pray for you? And he started praying with the team immediately. A whole lot of red t-shirts surrounded me. And specifically a woman, Jenny, kind of came one-on-one with me and the guy surrounded, her husband as well, and then this young guy. I think there might have even been a fourth person.
Mm-hmm.
My friend from church was the fourth person. And they prayed, and I was anointed with the Holy Spirit. I landed up on the floor. I felt quite a struggle though. It almost was like the pain got worse first. And I was lying there in my own headspace going, oh my gosh, this is not working. This is so unfair. But it was as if that tug of war eventually got broken and I felt a sense of freedom and I felt huge emotion. And when I finally got up and shared a bit with them, I said to them, I really do feel like something major has shifted. And so they asked if that evening, for the evening testimonies, if I could share that. And so when the evening session started, they had a few of us line up and I was able to. It was even on one of the Christian live feed programs, an opportunity for me to go, hey guys, finally I've had a breakthrough, and wow. And of course it was hugely joyful for me and for anybody listening because I'd given them a bit of context. So it was heavenly.
Awesome. So you have this experience.
Yes.
And you feel major relief. And then you leave there.
Yes.
Okay, and you go back to your everyday life.
Well, there was the last day, which
Yes,
was
okay.
Friday still. I
Okay.
came back the next day with the same sort of program where we had lectures with Todd in the morning, and then we went out and did our field work, and then we came back. And that day had a different twist on things. When we were praying for one particular woman, she was in a very dark place, almost reminding me of my dark place 8 years before, where so hopeless and so helpless when I'd walked into that rehab that she was resisting the love that we were trying to give her, and I could relate. And everything I'd learned from a Christian perspective, I was able to be quite firm with her and say to her, you can resist all you like, but this is what love looks like, and we are going to keep loving you until you receive just a little bit. Even if we leave here planting only a seed and nothing changes, that seed is that you are worthy of love. And we spent about an hour with her and we were all feeling a little bit despondent, but we knew by my own experience and by everybody else's longer walk with God that it's not always what you see that is the evidence of the truth. So we all left and we went to the afternoon and the evening. I actually left. I had to go to a friend's wedding, so I wasn't there for the evening service. But by that night when I got home, something very dark had hit me. I understood immediately that I was under spiritual attack, but it was so severe from every physical symptom came back 100-fold, and my mind was accelerated into the deepest, darkest gloom I had ever had. And the question marks started again. Well, great, it was 5 minutes of bliss, but we're back where we seem to always land. So it was the start of, I call it the dark phase, a week of pure hell.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, what happens is you're there, you get better, you feel better, you testify you're better, and then the next day you go out again, etc. And then you find yourself back at home, you leave the meeting, back at home, you're back in pain again.
Yes.
And it's like 100 times worse than it was before.
Yes.
And, a lot of people can relate to this.
Yes.
Because at times people think that this thing comes back.
Yes.
When in fact it's not coming back. It's the enemy exploiting the same weaknesses.
Exactly.
And so, all right. So now you're in this week of just hell.
Yes.
Okay. And tell us a little bit about kind of how that felt, where your mind was at that time, and then kind of how you broke out of that.
Okay. So first off, I had the team with the red t-shirts with the Dominion Through Love Ministry swap numbers with me that time that they prayed for me. We also swapped friendship requests on Facebook, and they immediately, just as a matter of course, followed up with me on the Monday when they got back to Centurion to see how I was. By that stage, I had missed the whole last Saturday breakfast that I'd booked with Todd White, the whole day workshop and that evening. And my friends were going to that Saturday evening, and they said, "Oh, are we going to see you there?" And the words that were coming out of my mouth were so negative. I said, "No, Aldine's gone. I'm basically sitting on the lap of the enemy, and what's the point of going?" And I was shocked by the thought process and the profession of something so dark, but it was almost like I didn't care. And I was house sitting, so I wasn't even in my own, home is like your safety net. So I decided once I finished house sitting and finished fulfilling my responsibility, I would then kill myself, because then at least I would be away from, someone coming home to something really horrific. And so I left that house on Sunday, and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I had started Googling the most assured way to kill yourself. And at the same time, I had now Tamlin, who's your wife, from the Durban Dominion Through Love Ministry, contacting me saying, "Where do you live? Just give us your address, we'll come and pray for you." And I was completely not interested, because it seemed like a waste of time. I was hopeless. I thought I didn't want anybody to help me. I just needed to, I almost needed one more day, because I had enough money to eat, and I have always had a bit of a struggle with food. So I was indulging in chocolate and chips and all the junk food. I wasn't sleeping at all. The pain was so severe. I was pacing. It was almost like a state of delirium. And Tamlin didn't stop contacting me. Jenny was still contacting me from Johannesburg. My friends were still contacting me, and I just was not interested. I told them that Aldine is gone, and that I'm sitting on the lap of the enemy, and the game is over. Through the persistence, though, of people who love me, who hadn't even met Tamlin, and Jenny I barely knew, from the persistence of them trying to contact me on Thursday morning at about 2 o'clock in the morning, something shifted in my spirit, and I do believe that's what intercession prayer does, because they were all praying for me. And I had a positive thought, and that was phone Tamlin and at least agree to meet her. It wasn't Thursday, it was Friday. So it was from Friday to Friday. It was exactly a week. So that Friday morning, I messaged Tamlin, and I said, "Okay, I'm happy to meet." And that afternoon, Tamlin had Bible lessons with your daughter, as you know, in Glenwood, which is where I lived. And so we'd made a time. And it was so weird, because the whole day I was thinking, why did I have to go and commit to this now? I really don't feel like getting out of my misery. I was without a doubt stuck in that victim mentality again. And I was even late, because I had to force myself to go. But the underlying love, I believe, of God is what at least got me there. And that was then when a little bit of hope started landing in my heart.
Awesome. Cool. So how was that first meeting? How did you find that first meeting?
I was amazed that strangers could show such love. I mean, why would they be interested in someone like me? But at the same time, it was a huge honor to be shown that love. Zane came with Tamlin, and there was a lot of, I don't want to use the word scientific, but it felt like a lot of logical reasons why I should not listen to what my body is saying. And Tam had the almost like the softer feminine approach of just love, love, love. And I have that feminine side because I'm a woman, but I also have that analytical brain. So it was amazing how I was just hearing and feeling and sensing love, and it definitely helped me turn the corner out of despair into hope. And that was about it, because it was a Friday and then there was a weekend ahead. I think that would have been yesterday, 3 months ago, because it would have been the 26th of August. Now, I can just ask you a question. What was the date of the Walking as Sons?
I think it was that weekend.
It was the first weekend of September. The second, I think it was the 13th of September.
Yeah, it was roundabout. It was in September.
Yeah.
When we had that, and it was soon after that. It was the 10th of September.
Okay. So from that first meeting with Tamlin and Zane, we had met each week, and then I had seen through my church and through some of my friends that there was this event happening in Gillets called Walking in Sons. And that morning, I still didn't actually know where the venue was. And again, because I struggled so much with exhaustion, I thought, getting up on a Saturday, this feels like hard work. But I got out of bed, I got in my car, still not even knowing where I was going. And then my friend Pammy messaged me and she said to me, this is the address. And so my car literally drove up to Gillets, and that was when I met you.
Correct, yeah. And it was quite an exciting time, because there was quite a wide variety of people there who were talking that really had walked the journey with God. Did you find it encouraging?
I did, especially when one of your friends, Oki, got up and testified about his phenomenal miracle of being in a life of, I suppose you could call it the darkness. And I could relate a lot, because there were drugs and there was criminal elements, etc. And I had lived that life before I went into rehab, mixing with bouncers and drug dealers. And I'd always said to God when I went to rehab, if you ever show me a guy who is from that bouncer sort of bad-ass kind of background, get well, as in come to be drug-free first of all, addiction-free. I didn't realize it was possible to come into a Christian lifestyle as well, because that seemed so far removed. But if you ever show me that, then I will really be eyes open wide, hearing and convicted. And this is what happened. I listened to Oki's testimony. Not only was he shot 14 times, but those bullet wounds closed over within minutes after prayer from you. The bullets disintegrated, and he was healed from his addiction to alcohol and to drugs, and he had diabetes disappear. So all these physical ailments, high blood pressure sorted out, and some broken bones in his foot straightened. And I was like, oh my word, this almost answers in one testimony every single question I've ever had, and every single doubt I'd ever had was being scratched out of my mind. So I remember finding Tamlin afterwards and saying, right, what do I have to do to be a part of this? I want to know more, learn more, and experience this kind of freedom.
Okay, awesome. So that was kind of the how you began to be excited about coming through to what we're doing here on a Wednesday.
Yes.
Right. So what have you learned in the last couple of weeks, and how has it changed your life?
Well, the first thing that happened was I found myself excited about understanding what the truth was. There's one thing knowing the truth, but until it settles into your heart, which hadn't happened for me until these last few months, I could sense something was shifting in not feeling hopeless and excited about the future. For somebody who'd wanted to kill themselves, there was no future, so you didn't have to worry beyond the moment. And I didn't care any longer about what had happened to me and what wasn't fair. I just wanted to know more about what you were preaching about, what the word says. And I still experienced phases of physical pain, etc., but I'd spent a week in hospital between the Todd White and coming to that
Walking
Sons.
Sons, yeah.
I'd spent a week in hospital, and I'd had all the physical diagnoses, that some of which I knew about, some of which I didn't. They'd found lesions on my brain, they'd found the Coxsackie virus in my blood. So again, it was a bit of a struggle. Now I've got these diagnoses, which means for the first time, lots of different kinds of medication, including steroids. But simultaneously, I'm now here and I'm finding out more about what the word says about the truth. And I was juggling a little bit because the medication definitely helped the pain for a short period of time. But when my first prescription was over, I was then thinking, what do I do? Because the truth is that basically the pain is a lie. But when you're in pain, somebody can tell you it's a lie, but the pain stops you from having the strength to almost believe what the truth says.
Absolutely.
So I went into a second month of medication, giving myself just a window of, I guess, transition, because to go from such extreme, I guess it's deception, to growing up into the truth, because my identity had never changed. I had got saved 2.5 years ago, so I was a complete new being. I died to my old self, but I was growing into being a daughter, and I needed to grasp more of what being a daughter meant, and it definitely didn't include pain.
Yeah.
So what I was manifesting was not the truth. So that second month was my testimony of faith. Okay, God, after this, I will, in that second month, wean myself off, because it was all quite high schedule medication. And obviously I was speaking to you about how to do that. And there was potentially the risk of going through a detox, even though it hadn't been long that I would be on the medication. But I got myself into a place of really grasping that if it is just a lie, all I do to combat it is stand firm on the truth. And if it meant claiming the truth, even laying hands on myself, having prayer once a week at our meetings, I became willing to do that. That was my works, which would help my faith kick into a very, very powerful faith. And that is what the last month has been. I've weaned myself off that medication. I did have moments of, it was like sporadic, you could call it either a detox or attack, because every single symptom would rise within a day, and I was not interested. I almost ignored it. Even though it was painful, I ignored it, as in I wasn't going to buy into it. And I would speak in tongues, or I would reach out for prayer, obviously, play praise and worship music, do everything to drown out the volume of the lie, and by the next morning I'd be fine again. And the gaps between those kind of attacks got bigger and bigger. And as I sit here today, it's almost like a little bit of a niggle on where I had the abscess, or sometimes the scratching of the migraine, and now I just almost have a sense of humor about it and go, really? Come on now, you're just a lie. I stand on the truth, and there is only one truth, and it does not include pain. So, futsak.
That's right. No, that's good. Now, just to clarify, obviously your decision to wean yourself off of medication, etc., that was purely your decision.
Yes.
That wasn't something that someone told you had to do in order to be free. That's something you felt that you wanted to do.
And I'd consulted with the pharmacy where I got the medication from. I suppose it's the same as consulting with a physician. And I had doctors in the past say you can't just stop medication cold. Now, possibly I could have with the truth, but I also wanted to be responsible, and I was also very careful about who I told that I was going through that process, because unfortunately most people don't have that conviction, and I guess that's where people stay stuck in the medication route. And I wanted to quietly go about this with me and God, and as I say, some pharmaceutical advice, and I just went with it.
So if we take your journey from, say, August until now, and you take the state of your mind, and the state of your body, and the state of your finances and everything at that point in time, and you compare it to where you are right now, what would be your comparison? What would be what you say is the state of things now compared to then? Could you give us insight into that?
Well, in such a short space of time, it's hard to believe that it's only been 3 months, because from being convinced I'm going to kill myself with a state of no job, no income, no home, I now am in a place where I have been headhunted, and I was headhunted during the real sort of medium dark phase, because I'd come out of that suicidal phase into just being sick. I was headhunted. I went for interviews thinking, well, I doubt I'll have the strength to be able to do that. But when I recognized that was a lie, I went back for a second interview and then waited, trusted God, and got offered the job. So I was like, okay, God, if you've brought this job to me, because I definitely didn't go looking for it, I will show up and trust that you'll give me the energy to do it. At the same time, I'm weaning myself off the medication. So now I have a fantastic, secure income coming in, which is amazing, especially this time of year, being Christmas, etc., where last year as a self-employed person, it was a very stressful time of year, because you don't know where the next income's coming in, and everybody's shutting down mid-December to mid-January. So I have that peace of mind, which is phenomenal. I got my first salary yesterday actually into my bank account.
Awesome.
And I'm like, wow, God, it's giving me the opportunity to also save, because at the moment I've been blessed with staying with a friend while she house sat for this whole period we've just discussed, so I didn't have to pay rent, and I'm now staying with family. And in the new year I will have saved that if I find a place that I'm going to move into to now call home, I will have the deposit, the first month's rent, which is always stress for some people, because you never just have that amount of money in the bank. And I am already in a position where I've saved that money from my first salary, and I have a new family. It's amazing. Things with my blood relations aren't great at this point, but I've also been able to see that love comes from places where you don't necessarily think is the fairy tale, mom, dad, brother, sister. But why would I question that now that I've really got to feel love? So all my rejection issues have been blasted out the water. I find myself now in a place where I'm mentoring people through their rejection issues, because it's like, love is so big, it can drown out that kind of pain. And physically, I've started exercising again, and it's been quite interesting, because I haven't been able to exercise for about 2.5, 3 years. And as I'm starting to do just a bit of walking, and I signed up on Friday to join a gym from the 1st of December, I have had pain hit my hips, pain hit my back, pain hit almost every joint in my spine, and I have just decided that that's without a doubt a lie, and that's what I would have expected to happen. So I've changed that expectation to one of not interested. God would never, ever, ever allow this, and my body is filled with the Holy Spirit. So I've got the treasure of God within me, so it can only be a lie, because my body is pain-free by what Christ did over 2,000 years ago. So I've just deflected it, and I've carried on walking even if I felt a bit stiff. And I have not used painkillers, because again, that's a route I'm not interested. And some nights have been a bit of a challenge, but I've just kept claiming the truth, standing on the word, because my experience with all my other ailments is through completely trusting and believing in the word of God got me through all of that. So why would it be any different with?
So what has completely left you now?
I would say fear of limitation, poverty, rejection, debt, and the illness one. I won't say it's completely left, but I'm about 80% in a place of expectation of my body coming into alignment with the truth. I think that's the one thing I've realized, is I am healed, but my body has lived a lie for so long. It's coming into alignment with the truth. It's not getting healed. I'm not in the process of being healed.
You are healed.
I am healed. And that is what's been renewed in my mind. And so what's been incredible for me is to continue to reinforce that. because if I do have moments of pain, then an attempted fear tries to come in, and I don't always get it right immediately, but within minutes or hours, I understand what's going on, and then I just go back to what the word says. And it just gets easier and easier every day to almost go, wow, this is quite simple. And often it's through just history and sometimes listening to negativity, it dilutes the truth. So now I'm becoming very, very observant of what I say, because what I say is based on what I think. Then once I realize what negativity comes out of my mouth, I go, what thought did that come from? Oh, the fact that I'll never be able to exercise like I used to. Well, rubbish, because I was always a top athlete and had been a dancer for most of my life, and that is what my body is capable of doing. And so that is where I am going, and I'm not going to let anything trip me up.
Good.
So it's all about what's renews in here.
Absolutely. So would you say then there would be a stark difference between where you were and where you are now?
I would say so, yes.
And are you happier now?
100% happier.
And the furthest thought from your mind now is ending life and that kind of thing,
100%.
because hope is restored. And in fact, like you said earlier, you are now helping other people actually walk the same journey.
Yes, without a doubt. Even starting a new job and getting into a new environment, I've had moments of doubt to try and come in and go, what were you thinking? You haven't necessarily got the experience to do what you're doing, or you don't have the technical know-how, because I'm in the digital marketing space. And then I go, rubbish, and then I find myself technically talking things that I didn't even realize I had the ability to pass on, and I'm training and I'm mentoring and I'm seeing that I'm so much calmer. I had someone tell me yesterday that their baby sleeps in an instant in my arms, and a man on Wednesday told me that he sees such a gentle side to me, and I just said to him, that has got to be Jesus. That is Jesus in me that's calming a baby, because my history of high anxiety, high stress, inability to sleep, and in other words, inability to rest, is no longer evident. I'm now in a place of rest, and I found that was the single hardest thing to understand. What do you mean, be still? I am still, I'm sitting down, but I wasn't still in that. I didn't trust what God was saying. I almost wanted the evidence first, and then I would believe, versus having faith first, and then the evidence revealing itself. So I think rest, peace, and calm, which is the complete opposite to fear, anxiety, and worry, are where I'm seeing the biggest transformation.
Absolutely.
180 degrees.
No, that's excellent. So now, if for the people who are watching this video, you've obviously overcome something quite huge in your life. Now, you haven't done it alone, okay? But you are an overcomer because you sought to join a team. You sought to be part of a team that could come around and help you and restore you. To people out there that are watching, what would you like to say to them as some advice on how to overcome a situation like the journey you've been on?
Well, one thing is for sure, I could never have done this on my own. In fact, for that week that the enemy had me isolated was when I believe he thought, got her, it's done. And because of the love of people and then pushing through and not giving up on me, even though I'd given up on myself, a breakthrough happened, and those same people showed me what it is to stand on the word. Without a team around somebody who's really struggling, despair is imminent.
Absolutely.
So I'd been in a church environment for over 2 years, but this closer one-on-one kind of God life group was everything I'd been craving, and now I was getting it every Wednesday on a meeting level, but a daily interaction as well.
Yeah.
Checking in, there's a group, there's also one-on-one, how are you doing? I could share my struggles, and I could get prayer, and I could also share my victories, and that's been evident in the last few weeks. It's not only, oh, I've had another rough night, or I'm in a lot of pain today, or please can you pray for me. It's been more along the lines of, jeepers guys, last night a migraine thought it had the better of me, and I just basically told it to go in the name of Jesus. I stand on the word, and then telling my body to come in alignment with the truth. For goodness sake, body, catch a wake up. And that has been so refreshing. And I believe just by having the word reinforced, and watching other people and prayer working, that I've got to see, wow, this can happen and is happening for me too. It is real and it's live and it's right now. It's not
awesome.
Down the line, maybe one day when I'm worthy. I'm worthy right now in this moment. And it's all because I've had people reflect that love to me, and that's why I feel this excitement to now take this and also be vulnerable and share my testimony, but then take what I've learned and have other people have that same blessing bestowed upon them from just sharing what happened for me.
Awesome. And so you'd recommend that people get plugged into a group and get around people who are there for them.
Exactly, and you can share your own personal challenges and struggles. And I haven't really had struggles in romantic relationships, for example, but I know a lot of women, that is their biggest area of conflict, fear, etc. But the model is the same. So I can take my physical pain and I can compare it to someone else's emotional pain or their desperate desire to be accepted or loved or approved of by a significant other, and go, no, hold on a second. If I keep focusing on the pain and you keep focusing on needing to be married to define who you are, we'll forever be in pain or seeking something outside of ourselves. Whereas if we focus on Jesus and keep our eyes on him and coming to know more about what he says in his word, we will then feel God, hear God, sense God, smell God. Absolutely. And realize we actually are walking as Jesus.
Awesome. I'd like to just sign this off with a verse that comes from the Bible. Jesus says, if you seek first the kingdom and his righteousness, then all these things will be added unto you. And the things he speaks of before in the passages that lead up to this statement basically takes care of every single major need that we have as human beings. But so often we try and put the cart before the horse. We try and get our needs met before we seek the kingdom. We say, we'll pay attention to you, God, when all our problems go away. Sort out our problems first, and then we'll put you first. It doesn't work that way. And the testimony Aldine is just giving you lines up exactly with what Jesus said. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and then all these things shall be added unto you. And so hopefully that encourages you, and we thank you for joining us. And Aldine, thank you so much for giving us your testimony. It's been so awesome.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay.